Hello and welcome to the history of Star Wars. Today we're going to cover Leia Organa Part 1. And here we go. Leia Organa, a Force-sensitive female, was an Alderaanian politician and military general whose career spanned several decades. From the rise of the Galactic Empire to the rise of the New Republic. Born under the name Leia Amidala Skywalker, she was the daughter of Jedi Knight Anakin Skywalker and Senator Padmé Amidala of Naboo. Through her adoptive parents, Senator Leia Organa and Queen Breha, she gained the title of Princess of Alderaanian. Noted for her fearlessness in battle and dedication to freedom, Organa was considered one of the greatest leaders in the Alliance to restore the Republic. Leia was born on the asteroid of Pallas Massa, 2 days after the end of the Clone Wars and the newly established Galactic Empire's purge of the Jedi Order. She and her twin brother Luke, who was born shortly before her, were the children of the Galactic Republic Senator Padmé Amidala, who died straight away after labor, and Jedi Knight Anakin Skywalker, who had recently fallen to the dark side of the Force. She was left with the lasting impression of the images and feelings of her mother that her brother did not. She felt that her mother was very beautiful, kind, but sad. Of the two children, Yoda felt that Leia was more suited to be a Jedi, owning to her own natural strength, will, and clarity. However, to protect the children from the Empire, Darth Sidious, and the now Sith Lord Darth Vader, Senator Leia Organa agreed to adopt the infant together with his wife, Queen Breha of Alderaanian, while Obi-Wan Kenobi personally watched over Luke, who would live with his father's stepbrother Owen Lars, and his wife Beru on the planet Tatooine. Through adoption, Leia Amidala Skywalker became Leia Organa, heiress of the royal family of Alderaanian, though it was common knowledge that she was adopted, and everyone assumed that she was just another of the many children left orphaned by the Clone Wars. She remained unaware of her biological parents' fate. During her childhood, Leia was taught by her father to appreciate the efforts of Alderaan's workers, but also the importance of her duties as the planet's eventual queen. She was also reared by a number of aunts who gave her etiquette lessons to turn her into a proper partisan, and lectured her about maintaining her appearance in the company she kept. Although Leia generally loved them, she refused to let them mold her into a simpering princess whose only aim in life was to find a suitable husband. Organa would often stand alongside her parents, wading through Alderaan's endless royal ceremonies, knowing that she could let no emotion show on her face. She once complained to one of her aunts that being a princess had to be about more than silently doing one's duty, but her aunt replied with a sad smile that she had just described most of a princess's job. Leia's adopted mother, Breha, once spoke to her about the short and sad life of her mother while she was playing in front of her mother's statue. In 10 BBY, the 9-year-old princess ran away from the royal palace for the first time. She hid in the woods for about a week until her parents' guard finally tracked her down. She would later remember that incident as the best week of her life. Once warned to stay away from Wilhuff Tarkin by her father, the Grand Moff made an official visit to Alderaan when she was 13. Leia crept along the halls of the palace behind the two men, listening to their cold, tense conversation. During the occasion, she realized he was nothing more than a merciless murderer and slaver. Once she turned 16, Leia was allowed to receive some martial art training with a personal instructor. Her family had deemed necessary for her to learn the basics of self-defense, giving her royal status and risk of abduction. She thoroughly enjoyed that training, which not only made her feel physically strong, but also allowed her to be released from the tension of her etiquette lessons. Thanks to her instructor, Leia learned to keep her mind clear and focused on a moment. She was also taught how to ride, even becoming an Alderaanian junior champion in the steeplechase. Leia eventually took her father's place in the Imperial Senate, becoming the youngest senator elected. Her aunts protested and argued that she'd be better off finding a prince for a husband, whereas the press claimed she was a princess playing dress-up, and not a real diplomat and politician. Spending the days leading up to her election, Listing out her grievances, intent on addressing the Emperor directly and bluntly, Leia was presented by her father to Emperor Palpatine on Coruscant with all the newly elected officials. However, when she met the Imperial ruler, she was frightened by his disturbing aura of evil that she was left speechless and dropped into a half curtsy. At some point, Organa met the Emperor's apprentice and enforcer, Darth Vader. Both were unaware that they were biological father and daughter. In her early days at the Senate, Organa discovered that betrayal always comes from those who acted the friendliest. Despite her sincere desire for real change and reform, Leia soon realized that no other senators seemed to share her ideals, as the Senate had become a mere ceremonial institution that validated Palpatine's every decree, and no delegate ever dared test the Emperor's patience. Unable to understand how the other senators could ignore the Emperor's crimes in the Outer Rim territories, Leia devoted herself to aid the suffering all across the galaxy. On one occasion, she rescued an orphaned baby Wookiee from the ruins of a village destroyed by Imperial forces. Yet to her annoyance, the media continued to reduce her to the label of princess, paying no attention to her humanitarian work. Eventually, Leia's leadership and diplomatic skills made the public seem to care about her, enough that any whisper of mistreatment would set the HoloNet on fire. Eventually, Leia would join the Alliance to restore the Republic, seeing it as her chance to actually help the galaxy, shortly before her mission to Tatooine. Weeks before the mission, Leia attended a reception ball at the Imperial Palace, like many other members of the Imperial Senate. This was just a few days after she delivered a speech in the Senate about increasing Alderaan's mercy missions to the outlying systems the Empire had forgotten or neglected. Despite her popularity, her speech received mixed criticisms, as many in the core worlds believed that the Empire was already providing the necessary aid, and that the Alderaanians' meddling was becoming too important. The Galactic Civil War. During the Galactic Civil War, after the transference of the Alliance's headquarters from Dantooine to Yavin 4, and a battle for the technical readouts of the Death Star, Leia volunteered for the mission to transport the plans against the wishes of her father. He reluctantly allowed her to go, but requested that she seek General Obi-Wan Kenobi on Tatooine after intercepting the plans. Originally, Admiral Raddus was intended to escort Leia to Tatooine to meet with Kenobi. Raddus's ship, the Profoundly, however, was diverted to Scarif once the fighting began. A squadron of rebels calling themselves Rogue One managed to obtain the plans and beam them to Raddus's ship. The plans were copied onto a data card by a squadron of rebels still on the Profoundly, which had been disabled by the Devastator. Vader led a boarding party onto the ship and massacred the entire squadron, but not before the soldier holding the data disk handed it off to another man in the next hall who barely escaped Vader and got onto the Adoptive 4, which promptly detached from the Profoundly and fled from the battle, setting a course for Tatooine with the plans for the superweapon. However, Vader spotted the rebel ship and began tracking it to Tatooine. Before jumping into lightspeed, Captain Artilles personally handed her the data card carrying the plans and asked her what they had been sent by Rogue One Squadron. Smiling, she replied, "Hope." Minutes later, Leia learned from the ship's senator officers that the Adoptive 4 impaired hyperdrive was causing it to leave a residual energy signature which could allow the Empire to track the ship. To make matters worse, she also learned that the ship's weapons and shields were barely functional as a result of the attack on the Profoundly, whose feedback had affected the Adoptive 4. The Bozan then informed Leia that the Empire had issued a priority red directive to stop all ships matching the description of a CR-90 Corvette. After a brief exchange with the soldier that retrieved the plans before the Adoptive 4's separation from the Profoundly, Leia and Captain Artilles realized that Darth Vader was after them. At a quarter of a parsec from their destination, the motivator on the ship finally gave out, forcing them to rely on sublight speeds for the rest of the journey to Tatooine. Before they could reach the planet, however, their ship was hit by a Star Destroyer. As Leia and her ship approached Tatooine, the entire system was swarming with Imperials, and the ship she was traveling aboard, the Adoptive 4, was intercepted by the Imperial-class Star Destroyer Devastator, which earlier almost captured the ship back on Scarif. As stormtroopers led by Darth Vader boarded the Adoptive 4, Organa stored the plans in the astromech droid R2-D2 and recorded a message for Kenobi, begging him to return from exile to deliver the plans to her father on Alderaan. While R2-D2 used an escape pod to land on the planet, Leia was stunned, captured, and escorted to Vader. The princess feigned ignorance of the Sith Lord's accusations. However, she was unaware that Vader very well knew from his earlier encounter on Scarif that she was helping the rebellion, and thus was berated for lying and forced aboard the Devastator. Once aboard the Star Destroyer, Leia evaded her Imperial escorts and made her way to a shuttle attempting to flee. However, Vader anticipated Leia's moves and thwarted her plans before she could escape his clutches. After transporting the captive princess to the Death Star, Vader had her imprisoned in detention block AA-23 in cell 2187. Following the Senator's disillusion, Organa was tortured by Vader so that she would reveal the rebels' base location, but she proved resilient to the mind probe-equipped interrogator droid. Afterwards, once the Death Star entered the Alderaan system, she was taken to see Tarkin, who threatened to use the station to destroy her homeworld, unless she disclosed the base's location. The princess claimed the base was on Tatooine, but Tarkin had Alderaan destroyed anyways to demonstrate the Death Star's power. Awaiting execution, Leia was taken to her cell once again. The arrival of the Millennium Falcon, however, led to her rescue at the hands of Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, and Chewbacca, with the three bursting into her detention block, disguised as stormtroopers, while Kenobi deactivated the tractor beam, preventing their escape. Unimpressed by their rescue once they were cornered by stormtrooper squads, she took Skywalker's rifle and blasted open a garbage baler to make their escape. Though momentarily trapped in a compactor, they escaped with the help of R2-D2 and C-3PO. With Leia bravely leading the way and keeping her would-be rescuers safe, they made their way to Solo's freighter, only to witness Kenobi's death at the hands of Vader as they escaped on the Millennium Falcon. As the Millennium Falcon made its way to Yavin 4 on Leia's instructions, the princess discerned that Vader had let them go to follow them. Solo disagreed, having great faith in his ship. His reluctance to keep assisting the Alliance beyond dropping their passengers on Yavin and getting his reward angered Leia for his selfishness. Once in the Great Temple used by the Rebel base, Leia met with General Willard and commended Skywalker for his skills, prompting Willard to arrange a flight simulator test to join the Rebel Alliance Starfighter Corps. After R2-D2's information was analyzed and the station's built-in flaw identified, General Jan Dodonna briefed everyone on the plan to counterattack the approaching Death Star. At the command center, Leia subsequently witnessed the destruction of the Death Star at the hands of Skywalker. Aftermath of the disaster. After the surviving Rebel pilots returned from their successful turning of the Empire's greatest weapon into nothing but a layer of dust orbiting Yavin, the personnel of the Yavin 4 base honored the heroes by orchestrating an award ceremony for them. Leia, wearing an Alderaanian gown, handed out the medals to the newcomers Skywalker and Solo. The time for celebration would soon be over. Painfully aware of the loss of Alderaan, she asked the rebels to take a moment of silence to honor and remember those who died. It was brief, for Dodonna announced their need to evacuate Yavin 4, since the Empire now knew of their location. Leia then shared a moment of banter with Solo and a moment of rapport with Skywalker before they parted ways. Hey, thank you for watching the history of Star Wars. Special thanks to Wikipedia and its contributors for all information you heard today. And very special thanks to my Patreon and to Royalty Free Tube for this fantastic free background. Please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment. These things really help the channel grow. Thank you and have a great day. Bye-bye. Oh, and this is our 400th episode. I just thought I'd mention it. I don't know. Anyways, bye-bye.